Hello, freedom seekers. I'm very excited to be here this evening, and I hope that you'll go ahead and comment and let me know that my volume and everything is coming through fine. I'm going to give this about 5 minutes to let people come on board and say, who you are and where you're from. Now, if you're watching this video, not as a live stream, but if you're watching it later, then go ahead and comment in the comments down below with any questions that you have as we go through the session here this evening. But I'm also wanting to encourage you to go ahead and subscribe to the channel and give the video a like, but you can wait until the end and make sure that you like the video. I certainly don't want you just to give it a like just for the purpose of liking it, but it does really help to grow my channel if you give it a like and also if you subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. And so I come here online live every week on Monday evenings between 8 and 8:30 p.m. And so tonight I'm on a really good timeline. Sometimes I run towards the later part of the evening, other times towards the early part of 8 o'clock. But I try to be here every week between 8 and 8:30. And then if you're watching the recorded video, then you can go ahead and just fast forward through about the first 5 or 6 minutes. And so I'm waiting for people to get notified that I'm here for my live stream and just kind of chatting a little bit. But tonight we are going to be talking about something that I'm excited about, and that is I'm going to talk about the dichotomy between monogamy and employment. And we're going to draw a clear contrast to living a life that is sexually and financially liberated. And so that's the dichotomy is going to be the similarities of monogamy and employment, and the contrast of how a sexually and financially liberated life is with that. And so you see, because for the reason that I come on here for my viewers every week is so that you can learn some valuable steps and information in the process of liberating your life sexually. And that may mean that you need to liberate yourself, or you may liberate your relationship. And I went through that process 13 years ago myself. After a monogamous relationship for 27 years, and had to liberate myself, and just reached a point, I just was not willing to continue to go on year after year in that same place I was. And I'm going to talk about my experience with that tonight, but I'll hopefully give you some insight into things to think about in your own life, and how the dichotomy of the life that so many of us live, and it just goes on year after year, and contrast that to the liberation that you can have. And so, the first step for me was to liberate my sex life and my relationship. And so I hope that that's the step that I can help you with now. And the step that I'm working on now is to liberate my financial life as well. And so I come to you every week and talk to you a little bit about giving you an update as to what's going on in my financial liberation, because it's a very similar process. And, it takes time, and it takes putting together a step-by-step plan and some progress. And I go into a little bit of that here so that you can see the processes that I'm applying in my life every single week are no different than the processes that you will go through and apply in your life to liberate your life sexually and liberate your relationship. And so if you have any questions, then be sure to go ahead and ask them during this live stream event. And I'll be in a moment just switching over my screen to share my notes, and so I can keep on track with my notes. But then at the very end, I come back to the screen and take a look at the comments. So if you do have any questions that you have put in to the question box or comments box, then I'll be happy to, towards at the very end, to answer any of all questions. So let's go ahead and kick this evening off. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and switch screens here for you. And we're going to switch to this screen right here where we start out every week talking about where this is the weekly wrap-up video. Well, I'm in wrapping up every week, we're talking about transition and thriving in an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life that you create and love the most. And that is where you have more sex with more people more often. And you are creating a magnetic elf life. An elf life, we want you to create a life that's easy and liberated and fun, and having the more satisfaction and pleasure in your life, not just for on a vacation, or not just on an occasional basis, but really where every year you then can take and look at your life and say, yes, it's been more. I'm having more satisfaction and more pleasure in my life. So the test to keep asking yourself is, you want to create a life that that is an elf life. It's easy, liberated, and fun, that has more satisfaction and more pleasure. So the test to keep asking yourself every day is just keep this in mind and ask yourself, is this increasing the satisfaction and the pleasure in your life? And ask yourself, is it going to increase your satisfaction or pleasure? So many of us are just going along on default mode and autopilot, and we don't really think about that. I didn't for a long time, and I just kept pushing on through life and what I call shoveling through life, and after a while shoveling through life, it ends up piling a lot of dirt on yourself, and you end up buried. For some people, they shovel through life and it ends up catching up with them, and that their health suffers. And I've known many people. Some people, like my first wife, she didn't live to be 60 years old. Kat's first husband didn't live to be 50 years old. And so many other people that oftentimes, that they keep just shoveling through life and not doing what they need to do, and it catches up with them. And so we don't want you to keep shoveling through life. I did that for a long time, and it caught up with me. And fortunately, I started to turn things around because I made a decision that I was just no longer going to keep taking and going on that same program, the same path that every day I was not increasing my satisfaction and pleasure of life, because I was living a monogamous life that I wasn't happy in. And so I finally reached a place just to put on the brakes and say, okay, I may have to go through some temporary discomfort and some temporary, pain to turn it all around, but I'm going to turn it all around. And that was also then it impacted my health, because I was not headed in the right direction with my health. I mean, I had in my 27 years of monogamy before my wife and I opened our marriage, I had gained 105 pounds. 105 pounds, and it's just a few pounds every year. Fortunately, I turned it around, because that's what happens when people just keep shoveling through life and they don't eventually stop and then decide to do something about turning it all around. Their life comes to a halt at some point. And so I turned that around, turned opened my marriage and turned my sex life around, and my relationship, where I really truly just enjoy the abundance of the relationships that I have. I'm here in Seattle right now with my partner Chris, and I enjoy being here and spending time with her, and yet I miss my partner in California, Cap, and it's just it's the thing that I really discover, though, is that when I'm not just spending all my time with one person, because after a while, you spend all your time with one person, there's a little annoyances and stuff that build up. And so for me, then, I find that it really leaves me wanting to spend time with the people that are in my life a lot more. And so that's just part of the joys of an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. But so let's go ahead and start on tonight's material that I want to talk to you about, and that is the dichotomy and similarities of monogamy and employment, which to draw a clearer contrast with living a life that is sexually and financially liberated. So in other words, what I got to thinking about is how, as this chart here shows, that I'm going to take and talk about the good and also the bad. And I certainly by any means do not have this as a complete source of information for you. And you can sit down and kind of think about this yourself, draw it out for yourself, and we're going to start out with talking about monogamy and employment. What's the good things about monogamy and employment? One of the things is that when you're monogamous, you have a floor. When you're employed, you have a floor. In other words, like Chris is employed, and she gets a paycheck very regularly, and she can count on that. You can tell there's something, in her case, she's in a pretty good place, a pretty good company. But and today with this whole COVID thing, that people are finding out that they thought they were in a good place. I read an article last week, a little over a week ago, about how now this whole COVID virus is now impacting white collar workers, and our unemployment numbers are expected to start to rise again now that we're getting through summer, as COVID numbers are starting and expected to rise again. But so the good part though of monogamy is that you have that one person in your life that is like your rock, and that person for sex and for companionship. There are people that feel like they don't want to get old and be lonely. I hear that a lot from people who are monogamous. They don't want to get old and lonely. And I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago that was the primary motivator for the person, is that he doesn't want to get old and lonely. And so monogamy gives you a floor that you can count on. Now, that person a couple of weeks ago, he thought he could count on his floor, just like employment. Sometimes you think you can count on something, and then something comes along like a pandemic, or in his case, also something comes along like a breakup, and 14 years is gone. And those things happen. You can't keep those things from happening in your life, but you can look at that as happening to you, or you can look at it as happening for you, giving you new options. And so often what I see people doing is that they have those kinds of shakeups in their life, and what do? They go right back to the same model. They go right back to climbing the ladder of a monogamous relationship, or climbing the ladder of going out and seeking employment again, and putting themselves in that same place. Well, and so that is part of the good part of monogamy and employment, is you have a floor, and it's fast. If you need to make a couple $1,000s, like a month, it's fast to go out there and just get a job, compared to what you see me doing every week, working on developing an income for myself online. And so it's fast. And same thing with a relationship. If what I was wanting is just to have companionship and company, I could if I was monogamous, I could get into a relationship fast. Now, some people have struggles with that, I understand, but that's because they really create their own barriers. And but so it can be fast. And the other part of this then is sexual and financial liberation. So I want to take a moment then and talk about the good parts of sexual and financial liberation. And so, first of all, I find that I have much more happiness in my sexually liberated life than I ever did in my monogamous life. Financial liberation. I've had and I've experienced financial liberation, some degree of that, certainly a lot more than people who are always employed, where you can't always get the time off from work that you want. And so with financial liberation, I choose my schedule and I choose my time on and my time working. And I enjoy that level of happiness that it brings to my life from the financial liberation, being able to have that freedom and that joy of choosing my own schedule. And so it adds a lot of happiness. I feel more fulfilled, both because of my sexual liberation and my financial liberation. I certainly have a lot more satisfaction, a lot more pleasure. And the thing about it is that, I can keep having more and more and more sexual liberation and enjoyment, and more and more and more financial liberation and enjoyment, because there's no ceiling. There's no ceiling. I can have more relationships. I can go out and have more just temporary, short-term sex if that's what I want, or long-term sex. I decide all that. It's not being decided for me. And so that's one of the really great things about sexual and financial liberation, that I can keep having more and more and more, and I get to decide that. And to come with that is that there really is a lot of personal growth and development. Every relationship that you have come along in your life, and in the good times of that relationship and in the hard times of that relationship, that it brings to you opportunities to grow and for your own personal growth and development. Now, some people just don't really feel like that's something that they really want in their life, is growth. I was married to a woman, my first wife. She was married for 34 years, and she really she liked making sure she just had sameness in her life, and every day was the same. And I suppose that that's good for a person then that is wanting to be employed and wanting a monogamous life. But if you're just not satisfied with that same day in and day out, everything being the same, then maybe a sexual and financially liberated life is going to be more fulfilling for you. Of course, then another thing is that I really enjoy the safety from my sexually and financially liberated life, and it's a safety in that people. I have a friend that's been having some real health challenges through this year, and and I was talking to him, or just chatting with him, texting actually, and he's married, but he and his wife live an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And he was at a place just a month ago where he was thinking about that he may not make it. He may die. He was in the hospital, and he thought he might die. But in thinking that, though, he knows that his partner, and she knows that he's not going to be lonely then after that happens. Now, for me, where I've got two wonderful partners in my life, that I live with one in Seattle, I live with one in California, and when my financial world fell apart, then that level of safety of me being able to have the partners in my life that I do, that level of safety is something that was really a good part of my liberated life. And the fact that there's really no ceiling, and that kind of ties in with the more, and that with that I'm not limited as to how much I can have in the way of partners and sex and finances and time that I can enjoy spending off, or the time I can enjoy. It's all a balance, but I get to choose that balance, and I make and create the life that I have instead of having it dictated to me. But the biggest, and I think that the best thing about having a liberated life is that I really come alive inside. Because for so long living that life of frustration and monogamy, I was living a slow death inside, and just slowly, day by day, that's where that test is so important. Are you headed in the direction today? Is what you're doing right now today, is that heading you in the direction of more satisfaction and pleasure in your life or not? When you go home to that partner, is it heading, if that relationship that you have, is it heading you in the direction of more satisfaction and pleasure, or is it not? So I talked to a lot of people today that it's not. And, and it's really just, it's learning how to convince them to make some changes. And sometimes those changes can be rough to go through. But you may go through, and it's kind of like we're going through right now with COVID. I'm here in Seattle, and my partner and I were talking, Chris and I were talking the other day, that this coming weekend we kind of like to get out and do something. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here in Seattle before I head back to California. I'm trying to get some business things wrapped up and stuff here. And so we wanted to, it'd be nice to go out and do something. I mean, we like to go dancing, we like to go hiking, we like to go do all kinds of sightseeing and road trips, and there's just we like to do all kinds of things. And yet everything we would talk about things, and this is where I think I mentioned to you that we're making some chocolate, and I'll be coming out with a video to talk about how we're making chocolate, and from the cacao bean to a bar, and so that's been a lot of fun. But and that's been a COVID safe activity. And I know there's a lot of people today that are, don't have the same level of precaution that we take, and that's fine. Everybody needs to make their own decisions on this, and it's easy for us to let down our guard and just say, yeah, we're going to go out and have ourselves a lot of fun on Saturday and Sunday, But see, we thought about, for instance, there's a town here in Washington that is called La Conner. We talked about going there, and it's on a nice little channel of water, and just a cute little town to go to. But when we get there, it's like you enjoy walking around and going in and out of the shops, and I like sitting out on the boardwalk and having a beer or having a coffee. But I'm not going to do that, not to jeopardize the possibility that I could pick up and get COVID-19 and then spread it to someone, and somebody would end up dying. And so I'm not going to do that. Same thing we talked about, going, even going places, that now, because everybody's wanting to get out so much, that you go somewhere that you think that is going to be pretty comfortable and pretty safe, but then you find that there's just lots of people there. And it's funny how this whole thing with COVID is being politicized, because it's like they say, oh yeah, 6 feet is all you need, and then they come out and they say, no, all the science telling us that 6 feet is not what you need. Well, and that's what I've been saying for a long time, since March. I started saying in March, think about somebody having COVID. If you could smell it like you do somebody smoking a cigarette. 25 feet, is that all you need distance to keep it from drifting in your direction? Yeah, and so, and people say, outside is better. Well, that depends upon what direction the wind is blowing, and whether you're upwind or downwind from someone who has COVID virus. And I just don't take those kinds of chances. But I'm not here tonight to talk to you, really about COVID. But the thing is I'm here to talk about liberating your life so that you can feel alive again. And so during this time, then we have to make adjustments, but it's going to be a short time. Yes, 2 years is what I've been saying that we're going to be needing to take for this. But, 2 years, that's what it took me to transition my marriage from monogamy to non-monogamy. And that's also what I'm kind of figuring is going to take me to transition my income to be able to be totally financially liberated so that my income is just coming in to me. I can travel around and do what I want and have the time that I want to do it in and the money that I want to do the things that I want to do. And it's going to take me 2 years to get there. Here we are. We're in week 18 now. And so I started asking myself 18 weeks ago and doing these weekly updates, okay, what it is that I'm wanting and how am I going to every week just keep moving moving forward on it. And that means that as you've seen me go through this, that yeah, I've got failure at times and setbacks and things of that nature. But that's okay. It's all part of the process because it's better than just sitting back and doing nothing. I'd rather fail and then get myself back up and move forward some more than to sit back and do nothing. And you take a look at any child that creates their life or any teenager that creates their life. When you go out and you taking driving lessons and Chris right now is in the process of helping her daughter, get her driver's license and taking driver's license or driving lessons. And, when you come to a stop sign, sometimes you overshoot it. Sometimes you undershoot it. There's lots of failure, but it's part of the learning process that you have to go through and allow yourself to go through that until you start to actually get having some success. And then when you start having some success, after a while, success at that particular task becomes normal, becomes routine. And that then is how I recommend. Maybe the failure that you need to have is like when I started out in transitioning my monogamous marriage to non-monogamy, I failed at communicating with my wife. I didn't say the right things that I should say. Then this is also where it's helpful to have a coaching program with a coach that you're working with, so that coach will help you to avoid a lot of failures. And that's why I offer our coaching services. If you want to know more about that, my email address is down there in the description. Just click on the description and go down there and take a look, and my email address is down there. And also my where you a link where you can sign up to our email that we have as well. But so coaching is a very important thing to me now in my life because I learned a lot about. Yeah, I don't want to keep doing it the hard way. I want that ELF life, that easy, liberated, and fun life. And I don't want to keep doing it the hard way. And so sometimes the hard way then it's not so much fun. It's not easy. It's not liberating. It's not fun when you're falling down and messing up. And I started out communicating with my wife, and I did it wrong. And it took me a year to straighten that out because I did it wrong. And so if you have a year to waste, then feel like you don't need a coach and try it again next year and keep trying and keep failing, and eventually, like I did, I got it right. And so maybe you go through that same process as well. That if I had a coach helping to guide me and to help me through the process, this would have been so much better. And so that's where I provide coaching services. And let me know if you feel like that you want to talk about coaching. But so let's go on from this and talk about the bad parts of monogamy and employment, and the bad parts of having a sexually and financially liberated life. Now, the bad parts of monogamy and employment is that you have a low ceiling. I talked about that you have that floor. You know, like my wife, when we were monogamous, I mean, she felt it was her wifely duty to have sex with me 3 times a week for 10 to 15 minutes, whether she wanted to or not, but that was her wifely duty. And so there was that floor for me. And so you also, though, with monogamy and employment, you've got a low ceiling. And that 10 to 15 minutes 3 times a week was a very low ceiling. And so same thing with your employment. You may get to where you just got it enough to be comfortable. But boy, right now, COVID hitting people, there's some people that are really hitting them hard. And don't you feel like you wish you could really help people in a big way that are hurting? But you can't because you don't have enough finances to do that. You're just covering your own needs. And so, the ceiling with employment is pretty low. It basically covers your needs, but that's about all. And so then also with monogamy and employment, you have limitations that are imposed. You have restrictions, uncertainties. You totally lose yourself, and that's imposed upon you because, like in your work, it's not about you, it's about your employer. In your relationship, it's not about you, it's about the relationship. It's about the we and the us and not the I and the me anymore. And so you lose control of your life and you lose yourself. And you have external forces that are in charge. So instead of you being in charge when you've got monogamous relationships, when you've got employment in your life, you've got external things that are outside of you that are in charge of your life. And because of that, sometimes people get to that place of feeling like they're just trapped. And yes, they're trapped until you decide that it's time to make a change. And like I did, both now with what I'm working on with my finances, but 13 years ago, what I worked on in my relationship. It was just time to make a change. And so then I'm no longer trapped. And other times too, monogamy and employment can bring you to a place of just settling for things, settling for your life, settling for the things that you end up doing, and that's where slowly internally you die a slow death. And you live a default life. You just are going along on autopilot, and that's what monogamy was to me. And then I didn't ever think that there was any other options. And that was just the default. Same thing for so many people. They go to school and they get a job and they go to work, and like that's just the default. That's how you're supposed to do things. There aren't more options really shown to you. But we like to help you to open up your options. And that's one of the things that our coaching program is designed to do, is to help you to open up your options. And like I've already said, for me, monogamy and employment was a slow internal death. Just ate away at me. Whereas sexual and financial liberation, though, some of the bad things about it, I want to point out to you too. And that is that if it's to be, it's up to me. I don't have someone writing me a check every week. I don't have someone where I'm guaranteed to have a relationship because I am a very non-monogamous person. And I don't think that in my monogamous structure, I don't want to have commitments and obligations. So I take and remove that floor from my life. And so if it's to be, it's up to me. And that means then that I need to make sure that I am someone that people want to be in a relationship with. I'm someone that people want to do business with so that I'm able to make my income that I want to make. And so you have to create your sexual life, you have to create your relationships and your financial liberation. It's something that you start learning that you can take charge of it, and you can take charge of it, but that means that you've got to create it. You can't just show up at work anymore. You can't just show up in your relationship anymore. You've got to keep putting your best foot forward so that you can increase your satisfaction and pleasure every day and every week, every month, and every year. You can keep it going up. But yes, you've got to create it. And so some people, they for me, I just find that that's where the excitement in life is. It's where I come alive and actually creating my life. And other people, it's just like not something that they want. And so that's where monogamy and employment is sometimes a better choice for people. But for some of us, and as it, I mean, there's what, I can't remember, somewhere around 200 million people in the United States or something like that. And yet there's 12 to 15 million of us that choose to be ethically and consensually non-monogamous. So obviously, that it's not for everybody, but it certainly is for a lot of people. And I hope it's for you. And the same thing with developing a financially liberated life. Now, the good thing with that, though, is that you can go ahead and have your employment and be working on your financial liberation. Same thing, just like now, you can have your monogamous life and be working on your non-monogamous liberation. That's what I did. I didn't take and change overnight. It took me a process, 2 years. Just like now, I'm going through my financial liberation, which is going to be a 2-year process for me. And so I'm happy to go through that process because I'm excited about the outcome. I hope you're excited about the outcome of what you're working on as well. And as I've talked about last week, though, or well, let me not miss over this point. One of the bad things is there are new skills and tools, or what we call norms, that you have to learn. And some people, they got to where, well, I thought when I got out of school, I was like all done having to learn things. And yet life really, I hope life isn't like that way for you, because there's so much. I guess I'm just a bit of a nerd. I don't come across too nerdy, I don't think, but I'm an information freak. I just love information, and so I like to learn. And if you're someone who just doesn't like to learn, then maybe monogamy and employment is a better place for you. So it's one of the bad things for some people, is that means that you're going to have to learn some new skills and create some new tools in your life, which are the norms that you live by, in order to really thrive in a non-monogamous life and also in a financially liberated life. But the good part is that that's why we're here. We're here to help you to create those new skills, those new tools, those new norms. Skills like, how do you go back and really talk with your people, with your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, or if you're totally single, how do you then go out there and talk to the people you're getting in a new relationship with about non-monogamy and not get rejected? And that's one of the norms. With monogamy, there's this model of scarcity, and that's why you're afraid about getting rejected. Oh my gosh, if I get rejected, then that's going to be it. It's going to be over for me. Instead of, oh boy, hey, I got rejected. That tells me it's just not the right match for me, and I'm going to keep going forward because I know that there's a better match out there for me, and it's going to work out great. Different mindset. Scarcity versus abundance. And that's where the reframing and transformation is so important. As we've talked about in the last week, and that's what was our focus all last week, is how important it is and how to go through a process of reframing, and that is what goes on up here. We're taking in new information and thinking about things differently and seeing things differently. And then after you start to internalize that mentally and cognitively and emotionally, then you start taking actions and your behavior starts to change and you start to have some transformation that takes place then. And it's that transformation that brings you to liberation. And that's really what I'm working on and going through now, is that I've done the reframing in order to liberate myself financially. And now the transformation is just taking the steps week by week by week so that I can get to the point of being liberated. And the last bad thing then about a life that's liberated is, yes, it takes time. I'm not going to go out there and just apply for some jobs and be able to get a job and make money right away. I could do that, but I don't want to be then stuck with that. Just like I can go out there and if I wanted to be monogamous, I can go out there and just decide to have one relationship with one person. That'd be fast and easy. But then is it really easy in the long haul? Because then all those things that we talk about being bad, that I end up feeling trapped. I end up settling for and having a default life and slowly dying inside. And I have all the uncertainty and I lose myself and lose control of my life and have the limitations and the restrictions and all these things. And so that's where, for me, it's worth putting the time into creating the life that I love the most, so that the satisfaction and pleasure that I experience every week in my life and every month in my life continues to climb and get better and better. And I hope then you'll find the same thing for you. But let's go ahead and move on here. I'm going to go through that. Let's get to our weekly report, and it starts out with, and this is where I want you to follow this and write these things down for you as they apply to yourself. But then you should be doing a weekly report for yourself as well. And I come to you here every week and do this report to you because I want to kind of show you how this works in my life. And you'll see that, yeah, in a week, in a month, and even in 6 months, it doesn't always seem like a lot is going on. But on the other hand, when you take a look at the progress that I'll make in 2 years, it's going to be like, wow, I remember when he was way back there. And I hope to give some of you hope that you can do it and do it faster than I'm doing it and do it better than I'm doing it. And so you start out by having your overriding desire. And I've got 3 overriding desires. One is to create an online passive income of $5,000 per month from 5 e-commerce stores. So in other words, $1,000 per store per month, 5 stores give me an online passive income of $5,000 a month. And so that's one of my overriding desires. The second overriding desire is to create an online non-monogamous lifestyles academy. And that's an academy where people can take and come onto our academy and get the help that they need in learning how to create a liberated life that they love and that keeps giving them more satisfaction and more pleasure. And we're going to have free memberships. And my goal is to have 1,000 free memberships. And then we're going to have paid members. And my goal is that 200 people would be willing to take a look at what we have to offer and say, yes, I'm willing to pay for that. The third last overriding desire is that I want to create an ethically and consensually non-monogamous financial liberation club with 1,000 free members and 200 paid members. You see, I want to take my desire is to take 1,000 people, 1,000 people that are living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, and help that 1,000 people work and do what I'm doing and go through a process. The only thing, I'm creating something that's going to be then a lot easier for them to do. It's a done for you program where 5 hours of your time a week is all it'll take for you to be able to create in a 2-year or to 3-year period of time, to be able to take and create. And I'll have numerous opportunities available, like for instance, these e-commerce stores. I'll have where you can simply take and we'll do a joint ventureship program on that, and for you to create $5,000 a month income, but you won't have to do the work that I'm doing because I'm blazing the trails, and I'm going to hire the people that will do all the work so that you won't have to do the work. And I want to help then 1,000 people become financially liberated. There are not only just, if e-commerce is not your kind of your hot button to get you excited to see how your whole program is working every week, then I'm going to have other opportunities as well. And so, I'm going to create a club called the ECNM, Financial Liberation Club. And I'm just very excited to be able to help 1,000 people have an income of $5,000 a month coming in. And yes, it may take them 2 or 3 years to get there, take them 5 hours a week to kind of make it all work, but it's going to be an exciting process to help 1,000 people do that. And so those are my overriding desires. And so you should be writing down your overriding desires. And for right now, my overriding need is my financial need and the things that I'm creating for my business. For you, you have to decide, is your overriding desire, it's really one of 3 areas. Is it in your health and wellness? Is your overriding desire in your sex and relationships? Or is it in your work and wealth? And so whatever one of those 3 areas is really the most important going on with you right now, in the long run, not the short term. You got to be looking long term here. Where are you going 5 years from now? And where do you want to be? That means that you got to make some changes. And so decide on that, and then that's where you create your overriding desire from. And you may only have one thing that you're working on. When I was going through my transition 13 years ago, I had one overriding desire, and that was to have an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. Where then I was married to the woman that I was married to, although I was willing to get divorced if that's what it took. But it turned out that we were able to open our marriage, and so then I could go on and enjoy a life that was just rich and rewarding, having sex with multiple people, and having not only sex but having deeply loving relationships. That was something that I wanted. Maybe for you that you don't want another relationship, you just want to have more fun having more sex, and that's fine too. You get to decide what it is. And so write down what your overriding desire is. So then I'm going to go through now then and talk about then, and this is again what you'll want to do yourself every week, is think about last week. What were your 3 goals last week? What was your focus for 3 things to accomplish last week? And then come back and give yourself a pass or a failure. And so for me, in order for me to move forward and doing things that I need to accomplish, here in Seattle, I got things going on that I got to get completed. And one of those things is that I have items that I needed to place up for sale on Craigslist and OfferUp and Facebook. And so is to get those items listed for sale. Now I said 4 places. I was thinking about listing them on eBay as well, and I'm really finding that just 3 places is enough. OfferUp and Craigslist and Facebook, that's really all I need. But that was something I really needed to just focus on doing, because it's easy for me not to get those things done. And then weeks go by, and then here it is. I'm in Seattle where I need to be getting this stuff done because the stuff that I need to put up for sale is here. And then I'm running out of time. And so then the next thing is that I have a court hearing coming up this week. And so last week then started realizing that, okay, I've got to start to get things ready for my court hearing. And that's just it's in a state hearing, and my grandfather died, and it's just finishing up some things with the estate. But yeah, I've got a lot of work to prepare to and get ready for that. And that hearing is on Wednesday of this week, and so last week I just really, days go by and I don't take and get as much done in a day as I want to get done, and then right now I'm then under a crunch getting ready for my court hearing, and whatever Wednesday the hearing is going to happen, whether I'm ready or not. So this is a great week to be here, and I'll continue the next couple of days getting ready for that tonight and tomorrow. But so, preparing for my court hearing, I give myself I did prepare for my court hearing, so I'm going to give myself a pass, and not a fail, but I wish I got a little more done actually than what I did. I give myself a pass on getting my items listed for sale, and then a lot of the thing last week then was to get my bookkeeping done. And I give myself a fail on that. I didn't even get to that, and didn't touch it at all. But so I got 2 passes and 1 fail for last week. Now, what are my accomplishments that I last week? Let's take a look back on what really helped me. That's going to help me to move my needle forward, so to speak, and keeping me moving forward to my objective. And that is that I've added a new digital marketing coach, and so sometimes that's for me, that having the right coach that's going to give me the real guidance. I've got several coaches. I mean, I got coaches on the stores that I'm building, but those coaches I'm going to be turning over to the person I'm hiring to build those stores. And so I needed a more strategic coach to help me to move forward in knowing what's my next thing that I need to be focusing on, working on myself. And so I added a coach last week, and that was really good too. What were the bottlenecks, breakdowns, and breakthroughs? Again, another thing you need to ask yourself every week and doing your own weekly report. And the thing is that I realized that when you stumble your way through life, you'll eventually end up buried. I talked about that a little bit ago. If you stumble your way through life and you just constantly are shoveling dirt on your health, you're going to suffer for it, and you'll eventually end up buried. If you stumble your way through life and in your relationship, you don't pay enough attention in doing all the little right things with your relationship will end up buried. And then your financial world. And for me, then, that's what I found is that I stumbled my way through life for years in my financial arena, but I left a lot of loose ends. And those loose ends are the things that I'm now having to, I got myself buried. And, so I'm having to now take care of all that. And what really is, I'm learning the value of just living a very simple, minimalistic life. Because so often we keep shoveling and shoveling, and I had a house where I had plenty of room to store everything, and I shoveled my way to just having so much stuff in my life that became a burden that I got buried by. And so the longer you keep shoveling your way through life, then the longer it's going to take you to shovel your way out. And that's what I'm learning right now, is that it's taking me too long to shovel my way out. And some of these things, like, things that I'm working on then are, this whole estate thing is, again, something I'm shoveling my way out now. Listing things for sale, just getting rid of these things. I'm shoveling my way out, and so these things that now they're really taking away from me in moving forward. But I've got to take care of these things. I've got to do these things. You can't just forget about them. And so, when you stumble your way through life, the deeper you stumble, you're going to get buried, and the longer it'll take you to dig your way out. And I had stumbled myself a pretty deep hole and then filled in the dirt above it. And so I'm shoveling all that dirt back out now and cleaning my way through. So what am I going on to this next week to accomplish? So what I'll be coming to you next week and telling you about, and that is first in getting finished, getting fully prepared for my hearing, and then having the hearing and not have to sit there and tell the judge, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm just not really ready for this, and things like that. So I'll get fully prepared for the hearing, and so then the next thing is that this is actually was on my list a couple weeks ago, but I didn't get to it, and other things came along, like I realized the hearing was coming up, and I got to get ready for it, and that is getting my desk cleaned off, and so that really needs to be done. And I got mail that's been stacking up there, because when I'm not here in Seattle, then Chris goes through my mail and stacks it on my desk, and I got 6 months worth of mail sitting there, probably actually 8 months worth of mail sitting there. And so I know I've got things that I've got to attend to on that desk. And so that's my second goal for this week. And also then I want to leave my desk clear so that Chris can have that for a nice working place for herself. She's working from home now. She doesn't, in fact, her company has decided that it's worked out so well having remote workers that they are closing their Seattle office down, and many other offices throughout the country as well. And just having their employees be remote workers from now on. And so I want to make sure that I have a desk space that she can work at as well. And so, we'll go ahead and just kind of pull my camera around here, and you can see there's my desk, and it's a nice desk when it's not so full of stuff, when you can actually work from the desk. But right now, it's hard to work from it. And then another thing is that when we moved from out of the house where Chris now has her apartment and moved into the apartment here, but then out of the house that I had and all, then there's stuff that's my stuff that I didn't have time to do anything with, and I just put it in boxes and tubs. And so my boxes will wait until I'm here in Seattle another time, but right now, the tubs I had stored in my RV, which was being sold, and so those tubs now are in the living room here in Chris's apartment. And I certainly don't want to head back to California and have the tubs sitting around here. And it's got a nice apartment, and I want to make sure that I do my part in making sure I don't mess it up for her. And so that's been my third goal, is to start getting these tubs emptied out. And most likely, again, as I start going through this, there'll be some things that I want to keep, but most of the stuff, it's been a year, it's been stored in tubs, and so most of the stuff I'll find, okay, I really just need to get rid of this. And so maybe you need to go through some of that same process yourself as well. And so that's my three objectives for this week. And write down for yourself the 3 things that you want to accomplish for yourself this week, so that you can go through and do some of the same things. And so I appreciate your being here. Give the video a like if you enjoyed following along with me this week. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer your questions as well. But I want to help you to be able to liberate your life, and whatever area that is. There's 3 areas you got to focus on, and that is your sexual life and your relationships, your sex and relationships, your work and wealth, and your health and wellness. And so those are the 3 things we want to help you to liberate your life in, because that's going to give you the most satisfaction and pleasure you can possibly have. How much satisfaction and pleasure can you have if your health is failing you? How much satisfaction and pleasure can you have if you're really just not having that great of a time in a monogamous relationship? How much satisfaction and pleasure can you have when you have financial stresses and strains constantly? We don't have any time that's your time. You don't have any freedom, because your time belongs to an employer. And so those are the things that we come here every week and chat about a little bit, and let us know if you have any questions. We'll be happy to help you. But thanks for joining me tonight, and we'll be back with you for another weekly wrap-up next week. Thanks a lot now. Good night.